A millionaire can buy respect with money. But what happens when his assumptions about a black mechanic cost him everything? What you're about to witness isn't just about cars or money. It's about the dangerous price of prejudice and the incredible power of expertise that comes from the most unexpected places. Today's story will shake you to your core. It's about Marcus Williams, a master mechanic whose hands have brought life back to engines worth more than most people's homes, and Richard Sterling, a tech billionaire who thought his wealth made him untouchable. But when Sterling's $250,000 Lamborghini breaks down in the wrong neighborhood, his assumptions about who can help him will lead to the most expensive lesson of his life. Before we dive into this incredible story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that matter. Now let me tell you what happened on that rainy Tuesday morning when two worlds collided, and everything Sterling thought he knew about success, respect, and expertise was about to be turned upside down. The Lamborghini Huracan's engine coughed like a dying animal as Richard Sterling pressed the accelerator. The $300,000 machine that usually purred like a contented cat was now producing sounds that made his stomach churn. Steam began rising from under the hood as he pulled into the first repair shop he could find. Williams Auto Repair, located in what Sterling would later describe to his country club friends as the rough part of town. Sterling had never been in this neighborhood before. His usual mechanic was Hans Mueller, a German specialist who charged $200 per hour and wore pristine white coats. This place looked different, older, grittier, with oil stains on the concrete and tools that had clearly seen decades of use. But his car was dying, and he had an important board meeting in 3 hours. Marcus Williams emerged from under the hood of a 1987 Chevy pickup truck, wiping his hands on a rag. At 35, Marcus had spent 18 years perfecting his craft. Starting as a teenager in his grandfather's garage, he'd trained on everything from classic muscle cars to modern supercars, earning certifications that most mechanics only dreamed of. His diagnostic skills were legendary among those who knew him. He could identify engine problems by sound alone. But Richard Sterling didn't see any of that. He saw a black man in oil-stained coveralls working in a rundown garage, and his mind was already made up. "Excuse me," Sterling called out, not bothering to get out of his car. "My car broke down. Do you know where I can find a real mechanic who works on luxury vehicles?" Marcus looked up, his expression remaining professional despite the obvious slight. "Slight. I am a real mechanic, sir. What seems to be the problem?" Sterling's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Look, no offense, but this is a Lamborghini Huracan. It's worth more than this entire shop. I need someone who actually knows what they're doing with high-end European engines." The words hung in the air like toxic smoke. Marcus had heard variations of this conversation before, but it never got easier. His jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained steady. "I understand your concern, sir. I've worked on Lamborghinis before. Would you like me to take a look? Or would you prefer to call a tow truck?" But Sterling wasn't listening. He was already dialing his phone, trying to reach his regular mechanic 40 miles away. What he didn't know was that Marcus Williams had just finished rebuilding a Lamborghini Aventador's engine the week before. A $400,000 restoration that had been featured in automotive magazines. He didn't know that Marcus held advanced certifications from Lamborghini, Ferrari, and Porsche. He didn't know that collectors from 3 states brought their most precious vehicles to this unassuming garage. All Sterling knew was what he saw. And what he saw didn't match his expectations of expertise. The irony was about to become devastatingly expensive. "Hans? Thank God," Sterling said into his phone. "My Lambo broke down in some ghetto shop. Can you come get it?" Marcus continued working on the Chevy, but he could hear every word. 20 feet away, Sterling was describing the shop as sketchy, and Marcus as some guy who probably learned mechanics from YouTube videos. Each word was a small knife, cutting deeper than Sterling could possibly understand. Hans Mueller's voice crackled through the phone. "Mr. Sterling, I'm booked solid today. And that drive would take me 3 hours round trip. What exactly is wrong with the vehicle?" Sterling walked around his Lamborghini, steam still rising ominously from the engine bay. "It's overheating, making terrible noises. Look, I'll pay double your rate if you come now." "Sir, if it's overheating badly, driving it or even towing it improperly could cause permanent engine damage. You need immediate attention. Is there no qualified mechanic nearby? Sterling glanced at Marcus, who was now precisely adjusting the timing on the Chevy's engine, with the kind of fluid expertise that comes from years of experience. But Sterling's Prejudice was a thick filter that blocked out what was right in front of him. There's a guy here, but… Sterling lowered his voice, not realizing Marcus could still hear him. He's black. Hands. This isn't the kind of place that works on cars like mine. The silence on the phone stretched uncomfortably long. Finally, Hans spoke, his German accent thick with disapproval. Mr. Sterling, I cannot come today. If the engine is overheating, you need to shut it down immediately and find help locally. Color of skin does not determine mechanical ability. The line went dead. Sterling stared at his phone in disbelief. Hans had never hung up on him before. Worse yet, his car was getting hotter by the minute, and the strange knocking sound was getting louder. His board meeting was now 2.5 hours away, and his options were rapidly disappearing. Marcus finished with the Chevy and walked over, his movements casual but purposeful. Sir, I couldn't help but overhear. Your engine is overheating severely. If you keep running it, you're looking at complete engine replacement. That's about $80,000 in parts alone. Sterling's face reddened. How would you know? Because I've replaced 3 Huracan engines in the past 2 years, Marcus replied simply. 2 from overheating damage just like what you're experiencing now. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Sterling's features. But his pride was stronger than his doubt, and his prejudice was stronger than his common sense. The next decision would cost him everything. Fine, Sterling said, his voice tight with reluctance. But I'm not paying premium prices for this. He gestured dismissively at the garage around them. And if you mess up my car, I'll sue you for everything you've got. Marcus felt the familiar sting of discrimination, but he'd learned long ago that the best response to prejudice was excellence. I understand your concerns, Mr. Sterling. My diagnostic fee is $150, and I'll give you a full assessment of what's wrong before doing any work. Sterling scoffed. My regular guy charges $200 just to look at it. I'm not your regular guy, Marcus replied quietly, already walking toward the Lamborghini. As Marcus popped the hood, Sterling hovered nearby, ready to pounce on any sign of incompetence. What he saw instead made his assumptions wobble slightly. Marcus's hands moved across the engine with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was looking at. He didn't fumble with unfamiliar components or scratch his head in confusion. Instead, he began a systematic inspection that was both methodical and efficient. When did you first notice the overheating? Marcus asked, not looking up from the engine. About 15 minutes ago. It just started, suddenly. Marcus nodded, running his hands along several hoses. And the knocking sound, did that start at the same time? Yes. What does that mean? Instead of answering immediately, Marcus continued his inspection. He checked fluid levels, examined belts, and tested several connections. After 5 minutes, he straightened up with a grim expression. Mr. Sterling, you've got multiple problems. Your water pump is failing, which caused the overheating. But the knocking sound is coming from your engine bearings. They're damaged from running hot. This isn't a simple fix. Sterling's confidence wavered. This didn't sound like someone guessing or making things up. How much are we talking about? If we catch it now, before any more damage occurs, we're looking at about $8,000 in parts and labor. If you try to drive it anywhere else, or wait much longer, you're looking at a complete engine rebuild, minimum $60,000. Possibly more. The number hit Sterling like a physical blow. His board meeting suddenly seemed far less important than his car, which represented not just transportation but status, identity, and a significant chunk of his wealth. How do I know you're not just trying to scare me into expensive repairs? Sterling demanded. Marcus walked to his computer and pulled up a diagnostic program. Let me show you something. These numbers don't lie, Mr. Sterling. Your engine is telling us exactly what's wrong. While Marcus ran deeper diagnostics, Sterling found himself studying the garage more carefully. What he'd initially dismissed as run down revealed itself to be something else entirely, a workshop equipped with some of the most advanced diagnostic equipment he'd ever seen. The tools weren't just functional. They were professional grade, some of them more sophisticated than what he'd seen at prestigious dealerships. There was Marcus standing next to a pristine Ferrari 458, shaking hands with a man in an expensive suit. Another photo showed him receiving a certificate from Lamborghini's North American training facility. A magazine article was framed nearby, Hidden Gems, the master mechanics you've never heard of, with Marcus featured prominently. Sterling's phone buzzed with a text from his board meeting. Running 30 minutes late. Are you coming? He typed back, car trouble. Might miss entirely. The response was immediate. This is the Yamamoto deal, Richard. We can't do this without you. The Yamamoto deal. A $50 million acquisition that had taken months to structure. Missing it could cost Sterling's company far more than any car repair. No matter how expensive, but his Lamborghini was trapped in a cycle of overheating and damage that worsened with every passing minute. Marcus emerged from under the hood, his expression serious. Mr. Sterling, I need to show you something. He led Sterling to the engine bay and pointed to several components. Your water pump seal has completely failed here. See this white residue? That's coolant that's been leaking and burning off. And this knocking you're hearing? He had Sterling listen closely to the engine. That's your rod bearings crying for help. Every second this engine runs, it's causing more damage. Sterling found himself leaning in, actually listening. Despite his prejudices, he was beginning to realize that Marcus spoke about engines the way Sterling spoke about corporate acquisitions, with the confidence of true expertise. Marcus met his eyes steadily. I'd shut it down immediately and fix it properly. Trying to limp it to another shop would be like performing surgery on yourself to save money on a doctor. The analogy was surprisingly apt. Sterling had seen plenty of business deals destroyed by people who tried to cut corners at critical moments. But admitting that Marcus might be right meant admitting that everything Sterling had assumed was wrong. His phone rang again. The board meeting. Sterling looked at his car, then at Marcus, then at the clock on the wall. 2 hours until the meeting. The most important deal of his career hanging in the balance, and his transportation was literally falling apart in the hands of a man he'd insulted and dismissed. The irony was almost too bitter to swallow. Mr. Sterling, Marcus said, his patience finally wearing thin. I can fix your car, but I need you to make a decision. Every minute we waste talking, your engine is getting closer to complete failure. Sterling's world was collapsing around him. His phone showed 17 missed calls from the office. The Yamamoto deal was slipping away. His prejudices were being systematically dismantled by a man whose expertise he'd dismissed, based on the color of his skin and the appearance of his shop. How long will it take? Sterling asked, desperation creeping into his voice. If I start now and work straight through, 6 hours minimum. Maybe 8 if we run into complications. 6 hours? Sterling's voice cracked. I have the most important meeting of my career in 2 hours. Marcus shrugged, his professionalism masking his growing frustration with Sterling's attitude. Then you have a choice to make. Risk destroying a $300,000 car trying to make a meeting, or miss the meeting to save the car. Sterling began pacing, his mind racing through options that didn't exist. Call an Uber to the meeting? It was an hour away, and showing up without his car would look weak to the Japanese investors who expected American executives to display their success conspicuously. What if you just fixed it enough to get me there? Marcus stopped what he was doing and looked at Sterling with something approaching pity. Mr. Sterling, I'm going to say this once, and I need you to really hear me. There is no just enough with engine damage like this. It's like being just a little pregnant or just slightly dead. Your engine either works or it doesn't. Right now, it doesn't. The words hit Sterling like a slap. For the first time in years, money couldn't solve his problem. His status meant nothing. His connections were useless. He was completely at the mercy of a man he'd spent the last hour treating with contempt. Sterling's phone rang again. This time it was Harrison Yamamoto himself. Richard San, the heavily accented voice came through the speaker. We are concerned. Your absence from preliminary discussions is unusual. Sterling closed his eyes. Harrison, I'm having car trouble. I'll be there as soon as... Car trouble? Yamamoto's tone carried a mixture of confusion and disappointment. In America, this is still a problem for successful men? The line went dead. Sterling stared at his phone, knowing he'd just watched a $50 million deal evaporate because of his own stupidity and prejudice. Marcus had been listening, and for the first time, his expression softened with something like sympathy. "Mr. Sterling, I know this is difficult, but I can still save your car if you let me." Most painfully of all, Sterling saw everything he'd been too blind and prejudiced to notice from the beginning. "Marcus," Sterling said quietly, using the mechanic's name for the first time, "I owe you an apology." Marcus looked up from the engine, surprise flickering across his face. In 18 years of dealing with prejudiced customers, very few had ever apologized. "Mr. Sterling, you don't need to." "Yes, I do." Sterling's voice was heavy with shame. "I walked in here with assumptions about you based on nothing but the color of your skin and the appearance of your shop. I insulted your expertise, questioned your competence, and treated you like you were beneath me. I was wrong, completely stupidly wrong." Marcus straightened up, studying Sterling's face for signs of insincerity. What he saw was genuine remorse and something that looked like genuine respect. "I appreciate that, Mr. Sterling. But right now, your car needs attention more than my feelings need soothing." Despite everything, Sterling found himself almost smiling. Even in accepting his apology, Marcus was focused on doing his job professionally. "Marcus, can I ask you something?" "Sure. How did you learn to work on cars like this? These aren't exactly common," and Sterling caught himself before saying something else offensive. Marcus wiped his hands on his rag, considering how much to share. "My grandfather owned this shop. Started working on cars in 1962 when most black mechanics weren't allowed to work on white people's vehicles. He taught me that excellence doesn't care about color. Engines respond to skill, not skin tone." He gestured to the certificates on the wall. "I spent 3 years in Lamborghini's factory training program in Italy. Learned from the same engineers who designed these engines. I've rebuilt more supercars than most dealers see in a year." Sterling felt his face burning with embarrassment. The magazine article on the wall featured my restoration of a 1971 Lamborghini Miura. The owner flew in from Switzerland just to have me work on it. Marcus's voice carried quiet pride, not boastfulness. Word gets around in collector circles when someone can bring a dead engine back to life. The weight of Sterling's prejudice settled on him like a heavy blanket. He dismissed a master craftsman based on appearance, nearly destroyed his own car through arrogance, and lost a multi-million-dollar deal because he couldn't see past his own biases. "Marcus, I know I don't deserve this after how I've treated you, but please, fix my car. Whatever it costs, however long it takes. You're clearly the expert here, and I should have recognized that from the beginning." Marcus nodded slowly. "I'll fix your car, Mr. Sterling. That's what I do." As Marcus began disassembling the water pump, Sterling found himself watching with genuine fascination. Every movement was precise, every decision informed by deep knowledge. This wasn't just mechanical work, it was artistry applied to engineering. For the first time in his privileged life, Richard Sterling was learning what real expertise looked like and how badly prejudice could blind someone to obvious truth. The lesson was going to be expensive, but it was also going to be unforgettable. Over the next 6 hours, Sterling watched Marcus Williams transform from the man he dismissed into someone he genuinely admired. There was poetry in the way Marcus approached the complex repair, not the fumbling of someone out of his depth, but the confident movements of a master craftsman. "Hand me that torque wrench," Marcus said, not looking up from the engine bay. The blue one, calibrated to 45 Newton meters. Sterling found himself acting as an unofficial assistant, learning more about engines in one afternoon than he'd learned in 20 years of car ownership. Marcus explained each step, not condescendingly, but with the natural teaching instinct of someone who truly understood his craft. "The Huracan's V10 is actually based on Audi's engine platform," Marcus explained while carefully installing the new water pump. "But Lamborghini modified it significantly. Different cam timing, higher compression ratio, completely different cooling system design. Most mechanics see German engineering and think they understand it. But this is really Italian passion applied to German precision." Sterling found himself genuinely interested despite his earlier disaster. "How do you know which modifications Lamborghini made?" 3 weeks training at their factory in Sant'Agata Bolognese," Marcus replied, his hands working steadily while he talked. They don't just teach you to fix these engines. They teach you to understand why Ferruccio Lamborghini made each design choice. As the hours passed, Sterling's phone continued buzzing with increasingly frantic messages from his office. The Yamamoto deal was officially dead. His board was questioning his judgment. His absence had cost the company not just money, but credibility in international markets. But strangely, Sterling found himself caring less about the business catastrophe and more about watching Marcus work. There was something hypnotic about witnessing true expertise in action. The way Marcus could diagnose problems by sound, the precision of his tool selection, the confidence with which he approached each challenge. Marcus, Sterling said during a quiet moment, I need to ask you something. Go ahead. After the way I treated you today, why are you fixing my car? You could have told me to take it somewhere else. You could have refused the job entirely. Marcus paused in his work, considering the question. Mr. Sterling, I've been dealing with prejudice my whole career. If I turned away every customer who made assumptions about me, I'd have gone out of business years ago. He continued working while he talked. Besides, this Lamborghini doesn't care about your opinions or my feelings. It just needs to be fixed properly. And that's what I do. I fix things. The simple dignity of the response hit Sterling harder than any lecture could have. Marcus wasn't fixing the car despite Sterling's behavior. He was fixing it because that was who Marcus was. A professional who took pride in his work regardless of how others treated him. As the sun began to set outside the garage, Marcus finished the final connections and stepped back from the engine bay. Mr. Sterling, would you like to start her up? Sterling's hand trembled slightly as he turned the key. The Lamborghini's engine turned over once, twice, then roared to life with the smooth, powerful sound of properly functioning machinery. No knocking, no overheating, no warning lights on the dashboard. It was the sound of redemption, both mechanical and personal. That'll be $7,080.47. Marcus said, handing Sterling the detailed invoice. Parts, labor, and diagnostic fees. I was able to catch the bearing damage before it became catastrophic, so we saved you about $50,000 in engine replacement costs. Sterling looked at the bill, cheaper than he'd expected, more professional than he'd imagined possible. Every charge was itemized, every part was listed with specifications, every hour of labor was accounted for. It was the work of someone who took pride in transparency and fairness. But the real cost of the day wasn't listed on any invoice. Sterling pulled out his phone and scrolled through the messages he'd been ignoring. The Yamamoto deal hadn't just died. It had been picked up by his biggest competitor within hours of his no-show. The $50 million acquisition was gone, along with Sterling's reputation for reliability in international business circles. Marcus, Sterling said, his voice heavy with realization. My prejudice today didn't just cost me money, it cost me everything I'd worked toward for the past year. Marcus finished putting away his tools before responding. Mr. Sterling, I'm sorry about your business deal. But maybe this was a lesson you needed to learn. What do you mean? You assumed I couldn't fix your car because of how I looked and where I worked? How many other assumptions do you make about people based on appearances? How many opportunities do you miss because you can't see past your preconceptions? The question hung in the air like smoke from Sterling's burned bridges. He thought about his all-white executive team, his country club where minorities were barely tolerated, his automatic assumptions about competence and worth based on race and class. Marcus, I want to make this right somehow. Marcus shook his head. You don't owe me anything beyond payment for the work. But maybe you owe yourself and people like me something more. Sterling wrote the check, his hand shaking slightly. As he prepared to leave, he turned back to Marcus. If I ever need work done on any of my cars again, I'll be here, Marcus said simply. And Mr. Sterling, next time, maybe try judging the mechanic by his work, not by his zip code. Sterling drove away in his perfectly functioning Lamborghini, the engine purring like it was brand new. But the sound couldn't drown out the echo of his own prejudice, or the memory of expertise he'd almost been too blind to see. The most expensive lesson of his life hadn't appeared on any invoice. It was the realization that his assumptions about others said nothing about them and everything about him. Marcus Williams had fixed his car, but Sterling's prejudice had broken something far more valuable. His own credibility, his business deal, and his comfortable illusions about his own character. In trying to protect his image by avoiding a black mechanic in a rundown shop, Sterling had discovered that the only thing run down was his own capacity to recognize excellence when it didn't match his expectations. Some lessons cost money. The most important ones cost everything you thought you knew about yourself. As Sterling pulled into his mansion's driveway that evening, his perfectly repaired Lamborghini humming beneath him, he realized that Marcus Williams had given him far more than mechanical expertise. He'd provided a mirror that reflected Sterling's own soul, and what Sterling had seen there was uglier than any broken engine. The question now was whether Sterling had learned enough to fix what was really broken. Not his car, but his character.